You join me here at the Bridgwater Canal, and I'm just at the intersection between the main length of the Bridgwater Canal and its original cut, the Lee branch. This branch of the Bridgwater Canal was the first Bridgwater Canal, and it was dug in 1761. And it was the idea of the Duke of Bridgwater, the third Duke of Bridgwater, or the third Earl of Bridgwater, depending on which title you want to give him. And he owned many coal mines, and his biggest coal mine was one in Worsley. And he'd found that getting coal down the River Irwell into Manchester was becoming a bit of a nightmare. The only other option apart from taking it down the River Irwell was to use pack horses. Now, pack horses can only take so much coal. So he had a little holiday over to France, and he had a look at something called the Canal du Midi, which is one of the first canals ever in the world. And then he went and had a look at something called the Sankey Canal, which we've had a look at in the video before. And he decided, I'm going to have one of them. Well, being a bit of a posho, he knew that he couldn't dig the canal himself, and he would need an engineer. And the engineer that he picked was a Mr. James Brindley. And he'd been gathering notoriety as an engineer. He developed a pumping engine in the Wet Earth Colliery in Clifton in Manchester. So the Duke said, come on James, build me a canal. And it was such a success that the price of the coal coming out of the Duke's mines dropped by half on the opening of the canal, which you may think is a bad thing, less money. Well no, it's more money, because now more people can afford the coal, and you have a much bigger market. And that made the Duke a bit of a bazillionaire. And that was such a success that he decided, right, I'm having a canal that goes all the way from Manchester city centre to Runcorn. I'm going to cut out the River Irwell and the River Mersey and get straight to Liverpool. And this video is nearly a Mersey Cuts video, but we're not looking at that big long stretch. We're looking at this little stretch. This is the Barton Swing Aqueduct, but it's not the first aqueduct that was here. James Brindley built an aqueduct out of stone, and apparently when they first filled it with water, it cracked in the middle, and a lot of the water leaked out into the River Irwell that used to run here. It took some great big cast iron bolts and some old-fashioned engineering to put it right. But by 1893, they decided they were going to construct this behind us, the Manchester Ship Canal. And the kind of ships that were going to come down here couldn't get under that old aqueduct. They toyed with the idea of building a high-level aqueduct with a lock system bringing you up to that high level so ships could pass underneath. But apparently that would lose too much water. And the amount of engineering it would take to put the water back wasn't really worth it. So the chief engineer of the Manchester Ship Canal Company, Sir Edward Leader Williams, came up with this weird, wacky idea. A swing aqueduct. A 100-metre trough that swings by 90 degrees, allowing big tall ships to go through. It swings water and all 1,400 tonnes of it. And it all swings on this centre section, which is bolted into granite blocks. Before 1929, it swung round on 64 cast iron rollers. But in 30 years of use, those cast iron rollers had squished down and they weren't quite round anymore. And the whole aqueduct was sitting 3.5 inches lower than it was when it was first built. So in 1929, they replaced them with steel rollers. And since 1929, the aqueduct has only fell by 2.5 millimetres, which is quite incredible. In the centre section, the whole structure is pushed up by hydraulic presses. And that released 50% of the weight on those rollers. Before the Second World War, that was all run on steam power and this great big hydraulic tower. But when World War II came around, they decided to electrify the whole process and change it for electric motors, which is how it runs today. It's a Grade 2 listed aqueduct, but that probably has something to do with it being the world's first and only swing aqueduct.
This perfect treasure, I know it's right. Moods can be lifted, the brighter the day. Take the blue skies and I'll take the grey. It's up to the weather, you know that I surely would say. She loves that. You can love the warm, that's okay. You can love the sun in every way. You can love the breeze and blow away. She loves the rain. She loves that. She loves the rain. You can love the warm and that's okay. You can love the sun in every way. You can love the breeze and blow away. But she loves the rain. She loves that. 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 She loves the rain.
This is Worsley Delph, and this is where the Duke of Bridgewater, or Francis Egerton if we're going to give him his real name, had all his mines. Coming off the Bridgewater Canal is a labyrinth of different canals that go deep into the earth, deep into the mine. It's thought that one of the canals goes all the way to Farnworth in Bolton, and that would give the miners an easy way to dump coal into barges and take it directly out into the canal. You may have noticed that the water around here is this sort of builder's brew brown. Iron ore from the mine seeps into the canal and turns it this murky brown colour. Worsley's quite a nice place to live now, it's quite posh, but back then it would have been full of miners. And one oddity is the church clock chimes 13 times to 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock was when the afternoon shift started. And if you think about a clock chiming once, it's easily missed if you're not listening out for it. But if it chimes 13 times, you can't miss that, and there's no excuse for being late for work. We think about these canals as being dirty, mucky places that take coal and scruffy old horses drag barges down it. But back in the 1700s, it was just like our motorways or railways. They used to take commuters. They started a passenger service by 1769. By 1781, it was running once daily from Worsley to Manchester and back again. In 1866, they built the beautiful Packet House to give all the posh ladies of Worsley somewhere to sit in their finery, so they wouldn't have to see all the boatmen's builders' bums and the scruffy horses and all the dirty things that were going on in the canal. It's now a Grade 2 listed building, and it's got a sort of mock Tudor vibe. I think it's some posh person's house now.